Thank you very much for this introduction. Good morning, everyone. First, I wish to thank the organizing committee for the invitation to take part in the IBD 2019. It's very exciting for me to be here to present my research on modeling biodiversity. And I am very pleased to speak after Dr. Morakot. You will see very clearly I am a researcher and I have a very different point of view than the previous presentation. But the very nice thing, the very exciting thing about this conference is to put together all these different points of view, this different perspective to this global goal of biodiversity conservation. So, I work in the Institute of Evolutionary Sciences in Montpellier, ISEM, which is based in France, in the city of Montpellier. And this institute is devoted to develop research on the origin and dynamics of biodiversity. My own research interests are in modeling biodiversity dynamics and on the mechanism of evolution. We are facing a critical time with the potential loss and extinction of many species on our planet in the next decades. It is now clear that our ability to predict the future of biodiversity will be critical for our sustainable development. And if you listen to some of the talks in this room yesterday morning, I'm sure that you are convinced that prediction is something very difficult. It's very difficult, problematic, very difficult question. Yesterday, we have seen some of the speakers presenting the forecast of the future of climate change, and these are something very difficult with a lot of uncertainty. So in order to address this question, this issue, my talk will explore different points. First, I will discuss a bit about what is prediction for biodiversity. Then I will defend an open science approach to prediction. And also, I will show you an example of modeling and prediction of biodiversity with an application in Southeast Asia. So, first, what is biodiversity prediction? We heard already about IPBES. It has been in the news recently with a conference in Paris, where they established this warning about the possible extinction in the next decades. 3 years ago, IPBES published this report on scenarios and models of biodiversity and ecosystem services. And one of the main conclusions was that scenarios and models can contribute significantly to policy support, even though several barriers have impeded their widespread use to date. So models are really useful, models are really needed for biodiversity protection, but there are problems, there are issues. Looking a bit more carefully to this report, we can find some of the issues that need to be solved to progress on this problem of modeling and prediction. Some of the key findings of this report are that currently available scenarios do not fully address the needs of platform assessments due to incomplete consideration of relevant drivers, policy goals, and intervention options. And another conclusion, which is more relevant to us here, there are large gaps in the availability of data for constructing and testing scenarios and models, and significant barriers to data sharing remain. That's something important. Indeed, it seems that in biology and ecology and biodiversity modeling, the use of models is not yet widespread compared to some scientific fields like physical sciences or chemical sciences. So, one question we are interested here is to see what are the problems and how we can solve it. And one important issue in modeling is the use of software. So to try to see if there is something that we can solve, we made a review of the available software for biodiversity modeling. And you can see on this table here a sample of the programs that are available on, some of the programs here, and their location on in the internet. So we made a review of these, and we assessed some of the properties of these programs. And we asked some questions that are very important for modeling. First, some are the implementation of these programs portable, meaning that we can use these programs in different computers, different operating systems. Is the source code available, meaning that we can reuse this program easily and repeat the analysis, repeat the simulations, and is the program simply available? And we found that 40% of the software for biodiversity modeling have no portable implementation. It means that they are just distributed for a single operating system. Only 15% of this program have their source code available. And 15% of the program are not available at all, even though there is a scientific publication describing this program. So it seems that the software available for biodiversity modeling is very far from being satisfying. There is a lot of progress to do here. And particularly, something that must be stimulated in the software development is an open source approach. Open source is not a new concept. It's something which is very well promoted in some scientific fields like bioinformatics or genomics, where it is required that the developer of programs make their source code available before publication of scientific or academic papers. And open data is a bit more new concept, which has been promoted recently by the realization that results from some scientific publications are not always repeatable. So now most scientific journals ask the author of papers to make their data available in public repositories. The combination of these two, open source and open data, can be called open science. There are several benefits to adopt an open science approach. The first one, and the most important for us here, is the increased credibility, especially when we make modeling which have applications for policymakers. It is also a wider contribution to knowledge. Developing software and making them available to more people is also a contribution to increased knowledge. It is also a way to archive data software. Some recent studies have shown that it's not always possible to restore archive data or archive software. People who have experience in research, maybe they know that. And finally, it's a stimulus for better career development, because now most scientific journals ask authors of papers to put their software and data on public repositories. Okay, now I want to move to the application and show you an example how using open source software can be used in biodiversity modeling. This example considers the interactions between human populations and biodiversity in Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is a very special region for biodiversity. It has been said many times during the conference. It is a place of some very beautiful places, also some places with a lot of diversity, hotspot biodiversity. But it is also the place where you can find the most populated and the largest urban areas. And also it is a place with very extensive agricultural lands. Urban areas are dynamic. We will see that later. They change a lot, and particularly they experienced recently important growth due to the migration of people from rural to urban areas. So it is important to assess this dynamic and the interactions between humans, populations, and biodiversity. So to address this question, we use databases, the distribution of terrestrial vertebrates from the IUCN, International Union for the Conservation of Nature. We use population data from the CDAC, the Socioeconomic Data and Application Centers, for the years 1990 and 2000, which have a medium resolution of about between 4 and 5 kilometers. We use data on land cover from the Global Land Cover Facility, and we use data from protected areas from the World Database on Protected Areas. All analyses were done with the software R, which is a free program, free and open source for graphical and statistical analysis. And the source code developed for this study were published together with the paper presenting, reporting these results. So there were two important patterns from this study. The first one is the distribution of terrestrial vertebrate diversity. It is very unequal in Southeast Asia, with some areas with much lower biodiversity and a large area with more than 700 species of terrestrial vertebrates, which is very important, which is shared among different countries, Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, and the south of China. The second pattern is about the distribution and the changes in population density. It is something which has been very heterogeneous in Southeast Asia, with some areas with a decreasing population between 1990 and 2000, which are shown in white on this map, and some other areas with increasing density, which are shown here in different shades of green. With the darker the shade, the stronger the increase in density. The graph on the left-hand side shows the relationship between the increase or decrease in population density and the initial density in 1990. And we can see something very interesting, that in the places with increasing density, these were areas with relatively high population density, around 100 person per square kilometer. These are actually rural areas. And the interesting thing is the contrast here with these areas with relatively low density, where the density of people increased during this time. And we will come back later on this result. We found overall, over the whole study area, a non-linear relationship between human density on the x-axis and species diversity on the y-axis. To make sense of this result, we built a model that takes several factors into account. So it takes into account this non-linear relationship between human population density, with two more factors, forest cover and protected areas, as well as the interaction between these two factors. And we found that this model has a relatively good predictive power, which depended on the spatial resolution, and it reached until 66%, with the main predictive power being due to the human population density. So how to interpret such a model in terms of prediction? This graph shows the predicted values of biodiversity with respect to these three factors. Population density on the x-axis, forest cover, which is shown in the bold lines, and the thin lines show open areas, and protected areas are shown in continuous lines, while non-protected areas are shown in dashed lines. So there are two things from this result, from this prediction. First, we predict that at low population density, there is much more biodiversity in forests than in open areas. And the second thing is that open areas can support more species at increasing population density. Also, one interesting thing here is the interaction between forest cover and protected areas. And we can see that the benefit of protected areas depend on whether we are in forest cover or in open areas. And the benefit here is significant only for open areas and not much for forest. There are several things about this model which limits the interest or which limits the prediction for this. One thing is that there is an interaction actually between human population density and forest cover. And in fact, these values here of population density are almost never observed in forest. So it limits these predictions here. And to go deeper in this question, we needed data with better resolution. So that's what we did by using other data. On land cover, we use data from the European Space Agency with a resolution of about 300 meters. And from 1992 until 2015, 24 years, so we can consider the temporal dynamics. The second data set that we use is the data on population density from the World Pop project, which have a resolution of 900 meters and from 2000 until 2015. The first thing that we characterize is a huge contrast of population density with respect to land cover over the whole study area. So we can see that urban areas, which represent actually a small part of Southeast Asia, support much more people per square kilometer compared to any other land cover in Southeast Asia. And the second thing is that forests, indeed, that confirms the suspicion that we had previously, have much more lower density of people per square kilometer. Okay, with this data, it's possible to look at the temporal dynamics of this. And we can see that by zooming in some of the part of Southeast Asia. For instance, here in central Thailand, it's an area where there are protected areas. And we can see there is not much changes in the land cover between 1992 here and 2015. So it didn't change much, but we can see some things here. For instance, the development of an urban area here on the eastern border of the square, or forest recession here, forest decline on the southern border, or even forest progression, forest regrowth here on the west border. Not all areas in Southeast Asia are so fortunate, and some places have shown some dramatic changes. This is the case here of these two areas here in West Cambodia and here in South Myanmar, where here in Cambodia this forest, which was quite important, about 20 kilometers or 30 kilometers in diameter, which has been almost completely cleared. And here in southern Myanmar, where there has been important forest clearing. So to go deeper in the question, we consider here how this dynamic of forest transition is related to local human population density. And to do that, we consider two types of forests. So imagine that we zoom even better, even more here on the forest border here. We can distinguish two types of forests, core forest and edge forest. Core forests are squares that are surrounded by 8 squares of forest, while the edge forests are square of forests which are surrounded by some of which are not forest. So this is like you can imagine zooming on this, and each square is about 300 meters of side. So over the study area, we found that there is an important difference and a significant difference in the human population density between core forest, here shown with the dashed line, and the edge forest in the continuous line. And also the important thing is that there is a small increase in human population density over time, only in edge forest. In core forest, it increases, but only slightly. The other important results that we characterize, so we made a model of the transition of forest to non-forest or core forest to edge forest and all the different possibilities. And what we found is that the probability for core forest to be cleared or to be changed to edge forest is related to human population density, to the local population density. So the more people there are in this square of core forest, the more likely it is to be cleared or to be changed into edge forest. We found this pattern only for the core forest, not for the edge forest. We didn't find this significant pattern. So the conclusion from this study here on this second study here is that actually the pattern of human population dynamics is something much more subtle that we have characterized before. And it depends a lot on the landscape structure with an important contrast between forest edge and edge forest. Also, another thing that we have characterized, which is very interesting and which is new from while comparing to the literature, is that there is a recent trend of population towards the forest, which is in addition to the much more well-known and much more studied trend of population migration from rural areas to urban areas. This is still something in progress, and what we are working on now is to characterize the heterogeneities among countries. What I have shown you previously is the trend of population density for the whole study area over all Southeast Asia. Actually, there is an important contrast depending on the countries, which is very interesting, and, but I did not have too much time to present all this. And also the important question here is to look at the impact of these predictions here, of these results on the prediction of biodiversity future changes. This is quite important here. Very few models have characterized these relationships between human demographics and biodiversity. There are several take-home messages from this. The first one is this non-linear relationship between human population density and biodiversity in Southeast Asia. And when comparing this to the literature, we see something specific about Southeast Asia. These interactions between local human migrations and how it impacts biodiversity, it needs more studies and it needs further assessment. And also, because we are in a session about innovation and bioeconomy, I hope to have convinced you about the interest of open software and open source computer programs, and it is an important tool for the future prediction of biodiversity. I still have a little time, so I want to thank again the organizing committee. I want to thank also all the staff for the organization. The organization is really fantastic for this conference. I want to thank also my colleagues here in Thailand from the Burapha University and Kasetsart University, with whom I have very interesting and stimulating discussions on these problems, biodiversity in Southeast Asia and modeling. And my colleague, of course, from the University of Montpellier in France. I told you this is a work I'm doing, so if you want to know more, I have this website, ep-package.ird.fr/ep, if you want to know more, if you want to follow what's going on this research. And thanks a lot to all of you for your invitation, for your attention.